Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today we present the thrilling season finale to the first season of A Game of Throws. Ooh. The star of today's show is the gloriously well-named Sinky McSinkerson. I swear these names just keep getting better. There is, however, good news and there is bad news. The bad news is that he's in a Tier 8 battleship in a Tier 9 battle. And it could have been worse, I suppose. He could have been in a Tier 7 battleship in a Tier 9 battle. Yes, Gneiser now, no use hiding at the back there. We see you. Just for the sake of clarity, I'm not actually referring to a Gneiser now in the battle. I've had that before when I was making a similar comment. Because I do like taking jabs at the Gneiser now, because it's dog shit. But the ship in the foreground was a North Carolina at the time. People were saying, Jingles, you old fool, that's not a Gneiser now, that's a North Carolina. Yeah, I know. I was talking metaphorically. I thought I'd better just, clear that up here, just in case the same thing happens. Jingles, that's not a Gneiser now, that's a Jervis. Yes, I know. Anyway, we were talking about good news, bad news. So yes, the bad news, Tier 8 battleship in a Tier 9 battle. The even worse news is in the USS Kansas. I wouldn't quite prefer to be in a Gneiser now in a Tier 9 battle over the USS Kansas. I think the USS Kansas is better than the Gneiser now, tier for tier. But it's still pretty bad. I mean, everybody looks at the Vermont at tier 10 and thinks, wow, that ship looks great. I mean, it's not. It's a terrible ship, but it has amazing guns, and amazing guns will do. Unfortunately, to get to the Vermont, they have to go through the Kansas, and this is usually the ship that breaks everybody's spirit. There is no good news, by the way. I know I said we had a bit of a good news, bad news situation. I lied. It's all bad news. Well, actually, there's no carrier in play. There you go. There's the good news. Also, there's only one submarine per side. I mean, that's not good news per se, because, submarines are always bad news, but it could have been worse. Also, there's only one destroyer per team, which is good news if you're in a battleship. There is very likely to be only one destroyer in the entire battle, however, because that Jervis up ahead appears to be unaware of the fact that he's just... I mean, look at that. Yes, those Missouris have radar. Yeah, he was all, oh, big, dumb, stupid battleships. I will close in, smoke up, and torpedo. What? The radar? Nobody told me Missouris had radar. Yes, Missouris have radar. They've always had radar. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but it was apparently a surprise to that Jervis, who by some miracle didn't actually die. Now that is a lot of Tier 9 battleships. I mean, we can see the two. There is another Missouri over there, and they all have very, very heavyweight 16-inch American armor-piercing shells. Then again, so does the Kansas, and it's got more of them. It has a 12-gun broadside, compared to the Missouri or the Iowa's 9. There is a difference, though. Actually, there are a couple of differences. First, the reload speed. The Kansas has a 40-second reload, which kind of negates the 3-gun advantage that the Canvas enjoys, because assuming that both ships start with all of their guns loaded, the Missouris and the Iowas are going to be firing their 18th shot every 30 seconds, while the Kansas is still reloading after firing its first 12. Also, while the Kansas does have 32mm of plating pretty much everywhere, well, if you look at the sides of the ship, the armor arrangement is basically a huge series of shot traps that you just don't have on the smooth sides, the smooth belts, if you like, of ships like the Iowa and the Missouri, and for that matter the North Carolina at Tier 8. So what that means in practical terms is that if you're in the Kansas and you are angling, as Sinky McSinkerson is, there are still all kinds of flat surfaces along the side of the ship that are not angled and just waiting to take full armor-piercing penetration damage from whoever's shooting at you. Plus, it can't have escaped your attention. I mean, look at the size of this ship. The Kansas is a big, fat, slow, chonky boy and rather difficult to miss. What the hell is that Iowa doing? Why would you... I mean, okay. Come on, reload the guns. Oh, this 40-second reload is painful. It really is. I suspect that Iowa may have suicided, because that's basically what he's doing. So he's switching fire to the Missouri instead. Shots out from the rear turrets. The front turrets are still crawling their way around, of course. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing about the Kansas. It might have 12 16-inch guns with super heavy armor piercing shells. But while we're not talking Gneisenau standards of inaccuracy here, it's not as accurate as an Iowa, a Missouri, or a North Carolina. It definitely relies on the tried and tested tactic of throwing as much shit as possible at the wall and praying that some of it is going to stick. I have no idea what that Missouri or Iowa thought they were going to achieve here. You can see the other Missouri is landing some decent shots as Sinky McSinkerson reloads the rear turrets and tries again. There it is. That's the Kansas for you. Throw as much shit as possible at the wall and eventually some of it is going to stick. Okay, the Missouri has just suicided following the Iowa, which the team really kind of needed there, because until that happened, they were down to 170 points. I mean, you know, the enemy team is still very far ahead, nearly 200 points ahead, but they really, really needed that kill. The enemy team have 2 of the 3 cap circles. Sinky's team aren't going to be taking that 3rd cap circle anytime soon. And this Missouri, to be fair to him, certainly been more effective than the Iowa or the Missouri that preceded him, and he is. I mean, it looks like he's kind of giving broadside when you look at him there, but if you look at his position on the minimap, you can see that he isn't. And he's trying to reverse and angle his way out of trouble. Sadly for Sinky's team, they're back down to 170 points again. They just lost their submarine. So they're now, without the benefit of a submarine or a destroyer, they're 2 kills and nearly 300 points behind. The enemy team are starting to flip. Bravo. Somebody, at least on Sinky's team, is attempting to fight back. If you take a quick glance down at the minimap, you can see the Shores, backed up by the Alabama, attempting to flip the cap circle at Alpha. And even if they don't take it, they're at least contesting it and preventing the enemy team from gaining any more points from it. But the enemy team are about to flip Bravo, unless somebody can stop them. And at 170 points, if the team loses 2, maybe 3 more ships, depending on the ship, this is already going to be game over. So the Pommern taking out the enemy Tirpitz with torpedoes was a real lifesaver there. And it looks like they are going to flip Alpha. Well done, the Shores and the Alabama. Of course, the enemy team are flipping Bravo. So, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, taking the cap circle at Alpha was definitely good news, because it's slowing down the rate at which the enemy team... Well, it isn't even really slowing down the rate at which the enemy team are accruing points, because they still have 2 cap circles. But at least now there's a slow trickle of points coming in for Sinky McSinkerson's team as well. If they can hold on to Alpha, and then maybe put some pressure... Oh, Pommern, what are you doing? Pommern, why are you broadsiding everybody, Pommern? You can't see him unless you look at the minimap. Pommern, no, you were doing so well. Please stop. Oh no, he's broadsiding the Missouri. And he's coming out. Why are you coming out from behind the island? What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh my god. We're going back down to 170 points again, aren't we? There it is. And the Pommern was doing so well. Tucked in behind the island, he only had the Missouri shooting at him. For some bizarre reason, he just had to come out so the Albemarle and the Charles Martel could shoot at him as well. A sudden and fatal rush of shit to the brain there from the Pommern. And then the enemy Fiji takes out the Albemarle as well. It is at least a points neutral exchange because the Albemarle manages to take the Fiji down with him. But the team can't afford to keep losing ships like this, even if they're not losing points. The problem here is one of positioning. If you have a look at the minimap, the Shores and the Alabama who flipped Alpha, if they want to actually capitalise on that, they're going to have to make their way past an enemy submarine and sail straight into the teeth of the enemy team around Bravo. They just don't have the strength to do it. It's a similar situation here for Sinky, because he just has an Edinburgh and an Iwami with him, and between the 3 of them, they're not really strong enough to contest the enemy team up there. An enemy team who, unlike the Iowa and the Missouri, who suicided earlier for no practical reason that I could discern, are smart enough to realise that when you're winning, you don't need to win any harder than you already are. So they're using concealment. The Missouri's trying, and under the circumstances, considering he basically has 3 ships shooting at him, he's done well to survive this far. He's consistently managed to weather the storm by angling well against both Sinky and the Awami over to the right's armour piercing, which of course is why Sinky has been hosing him down with as much high explosive as he can send in his direction, because it's probably going to be fires that are going to sink that guy. And make no mistake, they do need to sink him, because they can't push anywhere with that guy's 16-inch guns on their flank. That was the mistake that the other Missouri and the Iowa made. Well, it was one of the mistakes that the other Missouri and the Iowa made. But it's the one that mostly got them killed. Right. No additional fire. The Missouri is starting to heal back up. Oh, he took a big old hit there from the Awami. I mean, he's angling well, so he's not getting Citadel, but those were some nice armor-piercing penetrations. I'm pretty sure his damage control is on cooldown because he was burning earlier. Come on, Sinky. You've got this. You just have to hit him. Oh, the Alabama's gotten a kill. He's nailed the enemy submarine. That is fantastic news. That means the Shores and the Alabama now only really have the enemy Brandenburg between themselves and the cap circle at Bravo. The Awami finishes off the Missouri. This is great. Now they can start to push forward. They no longer have that threat on their flank. Why is the Brindisi given flat broadside like that with 3 ships closing in on him? Edinburgh, if you have hydro, I recommend you use it now, because I think there may be torpedoes coming around the corner of that island. And Sinky's telling him, dude, get back. Because yes, he is broadsiding a heavy cruiser, but there is a method to the Edinburgh's madness. There goes the smoke. The Brindisi, has left it just a little late to haul ass and start getting out of there. Shots out from the forward turrets. And at this kind of range, the Kansas is pretty dangerous. Come on, get those rear turrets swung around. These turrets rotate very slowly as well, by the way. I do not understand why the Brindisi is reversing. There must be torpedoes coming. It's the only thing that makes any sense. I mean, it's stupid, but it's the only thing that makes any sense. I mean, you know, he is exposing broadside to 2 battleships and an Edinburgh. But you've got to get those torpedoes away. Where are the torpedoes anyway? Yeah, the high-speed smoke isn't going to save you, sunshine. Too little, too late. The Edinburgh is going to get that kill. Unfortunately, the good news is rather short-lived, because the Shores and the Alabama, while trying to push through the Brandenburg, well, it's not all bad news. They're now actually 1 kill up. It cost them the Shores, but the Alabama took out the Brandenburg in return. Meanwhile, over here, the enemy Albemarle is doing a Brindisi. The difference being that the Albemarle actually remembered to use his torpedoes while giving flat broadside to the Kansas at point-blank range. Look at that torpedo dodge. Oh, that was beautiful. Beautiful, I tell you. Fantastic. I mean, she's a fat old girl, but it was just enough. I swear those torpedoes scraped paint as they ran down either side of the ship. Actually, you know, even if one of them had hit, the Kansas does have pretty good torpedo damage reduction. So even if one of them had hit, it wouldn't have been a disaster. But, you know, obviously, it's better that they all missed. Only 2 enemy ships left, the Mayhan and the Charles Martel, who just took a good old bitch slap in there, I think from the Awami. I mean, he's not doing a Brindisi. At least it doesn't look like it. He is angled away. Meanwhile, in chat... Yep, you said it. Your team does still have a destroyer, though. Hang on, where did the Alabama go? Wow. Well, I suppose that was kind of inevitable. I mean, it's a Mayhan. It's a Tier 7 destroyer. Fully upgraded, it's probably got the Benson torpedoes, which means it can stealth torpedo. And I suspect that the Alabama had taken a lot of damage from the Brandenburg. So, fair play to the enemy Mayhan, and well done to the Alabama and the Shores. Between them, they did some great work. This match would already be over if not for them, but they're now dead, so it's up to these 3 guys. Sinky McSinkerson in the USS Kansas, not a fantastic ship. The Edinburgh and the Awami. On the bright side, they are all together. And the Edinburgh does have hydro. So, depending on the timing, they should be warned of any incoming torpedoes. The Charles Martel, of course, has torpedoes. I believe they're the standard French torpedoes. They have a 9-kilometer range. So they could still be dangerous. More dangerous, however, I'm looking at that timer. Now, the enemy team are more than 200 points ahead. And we know where the Mayhan is now. I mean, it was kind of obvious. He's flipping the cap circle at Alpha because Sinky's team did have 2 of the 3 caps. And in the time remaining, they would win on points. If nothing else happened, with 2 cap circles under their control, they would have won on points. So the Mayhan did a no-brainer. He's now flipping the cap circle at Alpha. The good news is that means that the Mayhan is not an immediate threat. So with the Awami going around to the north, they're trying to reacquire and sink that Charles Martel. Because with less than 5 minutes left, one way or the other, they need to close that points lead. Now they can do that by flipping the cap at Bravo, and they can do that by sinking the Charles Martel. Ideally, they do that by doing both of those things. Sinky is slow, so he's heading straight for the cap circle at Bravo. He's not making any fancy diversions like the Edinburgh is. I'd feel a bit safer if the Edinburgh was going with him, because the Edinburgh has hydro, Sinky doesn't, and the Mayhan has finished flipping the cap at Alpha. There is, however, a nice big fat island right in the middle of that central cap circle, which Sinky should quite easily be able to use to shield him from any Hail Mary torpedoes that the Mayhan may be in the process of launching. The Charles Martel appears to have more than one working brain cell. He's trying to stay hidden, just take those points and run. He appears to have forgotten that the last comment that he made was in all chat. He just said just spot there, presumably talking to the Mayhan. And that's good advice, because they don't need to sink anybody. They just need to know where everybody is in order to avoid being sunk by them. And Sinky just got spotted. And then the priority target indicator lit up. Now that is invaluable information, because the priority target number doesn't increase unless somebody's locked onto you with their guns, not their torpedoes. And when it switches like that, it probably means somebody had just launched torpedoes at you. Somebody like the Charles Martel, who got himself spotted. Oh, that is really bad news for him. Oh, he might get away with it. Oh, no. Go on, Edinburgh. Oh, for God. Edinburgh, what is up with your shooting today? That's not the first time he's had a broadside target to shoot at and, well, basically missed. The Awami's lofting some shots in there from across the map as well, but it looks like the Charles Martel has gotten away with it. He's in cover behind the island. The Mayhan just popped up. Come on. You need a kill. With the amount of points that the enemy team has, and the time remaining, I don't think 2 cap circles is going to cut it. The Charles Martel just lofted some shots over there and pummeled the Edinburgh, whose hydro is running. He has spotted the torpedoes. But the Charles Martel gave his position away again. Go on, Edinburgh. The Edinburgh gets him. The Edinburgh has smoked up. Will he survive the return fire? He does. Right. Do they have enough time to win on points with 2 caps? Honestly, I don't know. They have to make up 100 points with a 1 cap advantage in 2 minutes. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. If so, it's going to be incredibly close. They could sink the Mayhan, that would win it, but I'm pretty sure the Mayhan knows that too, and is probably also equally unsure as to whether or not he has enough points to win if he just stays alive. And they don't have any radar, and the Mayhan's faster than them. But I mean, you have to count on the Mayhan knowing that they don't have any radar either. I mean, the Edinburgh could have had radar, but we've seen him using the smokescreen. And the Mayhan's seen him using the smokescreen. So, more torpedoes. He's firing them blind now, isn't he? But the location of the torpedoes gives us an idea of where he is. Or at the very least, an idea of where he was when he launched them. Don't forget, these are probably going to be Benson torpedoes. They will be very, very slow. But they don't need to kill the Mayhan. They just need to prevent him from getting any more points, which means not dying and getting into the cap circle at Alpha. Something that the Edinburgh, if he'd headed straight for the cap circle instead of heading south trying to find and sink the Mayhan, the Edinburgh would be entering that cap circle right now. And he's the one with hydro and the best protection against torpedoes. Which means that Sinky, if not the slowest ship in the world, certainly the slowest ship in this battle, is the one who's chugging forward, and he's never going to reach that cap circle in time. We can forget about the Awami. He's well out of position as he went north to try to find the Charles Martel. And then, just when Sinky is in a position where he cannot do anything about it, the Edinburgh catches the Mayhan. I don't know if the Edinburgh fired at the Mayhan. If he did, he completely missed. The Awami was paying attention, does get some shots out. It looks like They all completely miss as well. The Edinburgh got some torpedoes away. The Mayhan's even shooting at him. For some reason, the Edinburgh is not shooting back. And with less than 15 seconds to go, the Mayhan has gone undetected while 30 points ahead. It's not going to be enough, even with the 2 caps. Everybody says that's it, we lose, and with 0 seconds left on the clock, the Edinburgh's torpedoes get him. Which team tried to throw the hardest? Honestly, I'm not feeling confident enough to say. But on that bombshell, that is it for this, the final episode in the first season of A Game of Throws. What thrilling throws await us in the future? Stick around and find out in Season 2, coming soon. In the meantime, as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.